Hi, and welcome to the next video in the mathematical logic sequence. Still talking about propositional logic and its syntax, this time talking about unique readability. To get started understanding the basic idea, take this example sentence, conjunction negation, P1, P2. The goal is to try to take this expression just as a sequence of symbols and to understand it as a sentence, which is kind of to say, to know what its components are as a sentence. So just to sort of describe what I mean by that, let's play dumb a little bit and ask, could this be an atomic sentence? Well, clearly the answer is no. An atomic sentence is just a single sentence symbol. This is not a single sentence symbol, so we can't read this as an atomic sentence. Okay, still playing dumb. Could we read this as a negation, right? As the negation of some sentence? Well, no, clearly not. In order for that to be true, it would have to lead with a negation. This does not lead with a negation, so we can't read it that way. So, right, we can tell that we're going to have to read this as a conjunction, and therefore it must be the conjunction symbol followed by some two sentences. So how are we going to kind of group symbols together so that we read it that way? Well, if we just stop playing dumb, then we can kind of see that, well, whatever immediately follows the conjunction, we have to read the next several symbols somehow as a sentence, and the only way to do that is to group together the negation and the P1. It's the only way to make the next several symbols into a sentence. And then what's left over is reading the P2 as the second sentence. And that's the only way to parse this as a sentence. And now what we want to prove in this video is the unique readability theorem, which says that every sentence, take any sentence, call it theta, it must satisfy precisely one of these 6 conditions. It is either atomic, or it is a negation, or it is a disjunction, or so on. So it must satisfy precisely one of those conditions. That is to say, at least one of these conditions, and at most one of these conditions for every sentence theta. Moreover, we're going to make a uniqueness claim which says that if, for any one of these cases, if it has a subsentence, then that subsentence is uniquely determined. So just to illustrate what I mean by this somewhat, take the second clause. Suppose that we're in the second clause. Theta is equal to negation phi. But also imagine that theta is equal to negation psi for some other sentence psi. We're going to prove that phi must equal psi, right? So there's not two ways to read the sentence. There's not two different ways of grouping symbols together and so on to match these conditions. There's just one way. That's what we're going to prove. So we're going to break this proof down into 3 components, right? The at least one, the at most one, and the uniqueness claim. The at least one claim we're going to prove here by structural induction. That means that we need to have a property which we'd like to show is enjoyed by every sentence. And we're going to prove that it's enjoyed by every sentence by first defining the property and then by showing that it is enjoyed by every atomic sentence. That's our base case. And then prove that if it is enjoyed by any sentence, then it is preserved by taking connectives. That is to say, if it is enjoyed by some sentence phi, then it must also be enjoyed by negation phi. And then also for disjunction and conjunction and so on. Okay, there's the plan. Now let's execute on the plan. So we'll define the property as just being at least one of those cases holds, right? That's the property that I'd like to show holds for every sentence. Now, to show that this property is enjoyed by every atomic sentence is completely trivial because one of the clauses is that this sentence is an atomic sentence. So trivially, if that's what we have, it automatically satisfies at least one of the clauses. And therefore, the property P holds for that sentence. Moving on to the inductive case, or the preserved by taking connectives case. Suppose that phi enjoys this property. That is to say, phi is a sentence where at least one of those conditions holds. Now, in fact, I won't even use the property, really. All I need is the fact that phi is a sentence. And then I can say that negation phi is the negation of some sentence, and therefore condition 2 holds. It's just that easy, right? And in fact, all of the other connectives get proved in just as easy and trivial a manner. And there's the proof by structural induction. So we're done proving the at least one claim. Now we'll move on to proving at most one. Here I'm going to prove this by cases, and in particular I'm going to do this with the complexity of the sentence. So we're going to let n be the complexity of some sentence phi, and I'm going to consider two cases: n is 0 or n is strictly positive. If n is 0, recall what the complexity of a sentence means. It's the least index n such that phi is in cent n. Well, if that n is 0, that means phi is in cent 0. Recall by definition, cent 0 is just the sentence symbols, so that makes phi a sentence symbol. And then it satisfies clause 1 and not any of the others. If it is just a sentence symbol, it cannot be a negation because, for one thing, it doesn't lead with a negation, for instance, and so on. So there's that case where n is equal to 0. Now let's consider the case where n is strictly positive. Now, we are still saying that the complexity of phi is cent n. Because n is strictly greater than 0, that must mean that phi is in cent n. It is not in cent n minus 1. Well, that's just the definition of complexity. But then, because n is positive, strictly positive, then cent n is the union of several other sets, namely cent n minus 1, union negation cent n minus 1, union any other binary connective cent n minus 1, cent n minus 1. So that's what cent n is. And we are already, because of the statements we've made about the complexity, we know that phi is not in cent n minus 1, so it's not in that part of the union. So it must be coming from either the negation or the, one of the other binary connective sort of sets. Now, if it's in, right, it must be in one of them. So just to get started, let's take, for instance, phi in negation cent n minus 1. Then its leading symbol is a negation, and therefore it cannot satisfy any of the other clauses, namely clause 3 and 4 and so on, where in each of those phi leads with a conjunction or a disjunction or so on. So in summing up this argument, it's that if phi is in negation cent n minus 1, then it does not satisfy any of those other clauses, right? It satisfies the second clause, but none of the others. And then you can proceed likewise, right? That's one scenario where phi is in cent n minus 1. What about if phi is in conjunction cent n minus 1, cent n minus 1? Well, you run a similar argument. And so that's basically the whole argument, right? Proof by case is complete. So the at most one condition, we've now proved that it holds. We'd like to move on to the uniqueness claim, but it is a little bit more elegant if we first prove this lemma. This lemma is going to imagine that we have sentences denoted phi 0 through phi k. So each one of those is a sentence. And we're also going to have some other sentences psi 0 through psi l. And we're going to assume that the concatenation of all the phis equals the concatenation of all the psis. From that, we would like to prove that k must equal l, right? So there are just as many sentences on the left as there are on the right, and that for every index in the appropriate range, the sub-sentences in each also match, are equal to each other. That's the claim that we're going to make. Now we're going to prove this by regular induction. That is to say, I'm just going to have a non-negative integer and prove a base case for n equal to 0, and then an inductive case, assuming that the claim holds, the claim that I'm about to make, for n, and then if it holds for n, then it must also hold for n plus 1. So this is regular induction. Okay, now what is n? N is going to actually be the length of the concatenation, the length of phi 0 through phi k. Notice that that length is not, as you might think, k plus 1. K plus 1 is the number of sentences, but each one of those sentences may be long. It may not have length 1, so the length of this concatenation can be larger than k plus 1. So when I say the length, I just mean the total number of symbols, not how many sentences we're talking about here, which is k plus 1. Anyway, so I'm going to do induction on n, the length of the concatenation. So to do this induction, we need to do the base case, and the property that I'm going to claim is that if this concatenation has length n, then it has the property claimed in the theorem, right? So that's the property. Okay. So let's talk about the base case where n is equal to 1. If the length of the concatenation is equal to 1, then that basically just means it has a single symbol. And so the only way that any sentence could have a single symbol is to just be a sentence symbol. And then that means that there can only be that single sentence phi 0. There can't be any other sentences. There aren't enough symbols for them. So phi 0 is just a sentence symbol, and that's all that there is on the left-hand side. Since the concatenation of the phi's, which in this case really just amounts to that single sentence symbol, equals the concatenation of the psi's, then the same argument shows that the phi's are really just, the psi's are really just psi 0 and are just a single sentence symbol. And because they must be equal, then the phi 0 sentence symbol must equal the psi 0 sentence symbol. And that effectively shows that k is 0 and L is 0, so k equals L, and also every intermediate index I. Well, there are hardly any intermediate indices I. There's just the 0, I equals 0, but for every intermediate index I, the subsentences equal each other. That's the base case. It's somewhat trivial. Anyway, so we've shown P of 1. Now I'll show that if P of n holds, then P of n plus 1 holds. And okay, so let's suppose that every concatenation of length n satisfies this property. And then we'll prove that it also is satisfied by every sentence of length n plus 1. So in particular, what we're going to do is we're going to assume that the length of the concatenated phi's is n plus 1 and try to prove that the sort of claim holds for this situation. So if the length of phi 0 through phi k is length n plus 1, we're going to show that the claim holds. And under this assumption, we're going to do so by cases, namely on the type of phi 0, which I'm allowed to talk about because of the earlier parts of this theorem, which guarantee me that precisely one of those cases holds. Anyway, if phi 0 is atomic, well then, phi 0 is just a single sentence symbol. Therefore, it leads with a single sentence symbol, that sentence symbol. Therefore, psi 0 must also lead with that sentence symbol, and therefore, it must just be an atomic sentence also. It is also just equal to that sentence symbol because none of the other cases could possibly hold if it leads with a sentence symbol. Because in any of the other cases, it leads with something else. Okay, so then that tells us that phi 0 is psi 0, and they are both just a single sentence symbol. And so that's great because now we know that these particular sub-sentences match, which is part of what we wanted anyway. And then what we can do is, because of the equality of the two concatenations, we can drop this sentence symbol that is leading. right? So we could basically drop phi 0 and drop psi 0 from each side, and we then have equal sub-expressions. But these have length n, and then the inductive case kicks in, telling us all the rest of what we need to know. And so that is under the case where phi 0 is an atomic sentence. So now let's think about what happens if phi 0 is a negation. So phi 0 is negation, let's say negation theta for some theta, some sentence theta. Well, then because phi 0 leads with a negation, psi 0 also leads with a negation, and again, by the earlier stuff that we've already proved, phi 0 must just be a negation. That is to say, is negation chi for some other sentence chi. And kind of like last time, we can then say, okay, so by the equality of these concatenated sentences, each, right, the phi 0 and the psi 0 leading with negations, we cut off the negations on each. Those sub-sentences that are left over must still be equal, because we've only dropped equal characters in equal places, so what's left must still be equal. And then that has length n, and the inductive hypothesis kicks in. And that's effectively how the negation case goes. And then the other binary connectives cases goes basically in the same way. So I'll regard that as sort of proof complete. Okay, so that lemma is now established. And then an immediate consequence of the lemma is the uniqueness claim that we wanted to make if we just use that lemma where both k and l are equal to 2, right? So if, just to be clear, if we were talking about the negation case, that's actually trivial. I don't even need the lemma for that, right? So if theta is equal to negation phi is equal to negation psi, well, you could just drop the negations and then phi must equal psi, right? Those leading negations anyway. So really for that one, I didn't even need the lemma. But then if you had any binary connective, and we knew that we had that theta is equal to dot phi psi, but also equal to dot phi prime psi prime, we want to prove that phi equals phi prime and psi equals psi prime. Well, okay, drop the leading dot, whatever that dot represents, a conjunction or a disjunction or whatever. Then you've got the equality of phi psi equals phi prime psi prime. And then the lemma just tells us that phi equals phi prime and psi equals psi prime, and we're done.